Introduce Alana, Ben, and John. This is a very interesting trio, collaborating on lots of different projects with lots of different skills, and they're going to talk about one of their next ventures, One Big Open. So I'll pass it over to these guys.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm glad that more than half of you have gotten through the coffee line. It was delicious, and I'll shout out again to Burismo for slowly pouring and making sure everything's at the right temperature. My name is Alana. This is John and Ben, and we are colleagues, collaborators. We've all met in a co-working space, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about what co-working is, what it means to be an independent now in the world, and then how to fully make use of co-working environments. So co-working is an environment shared by independent workers, but it is more than sharing a desk space. It's more than just, cutting down your costs by, not having a full studio to yourself and being able to share the internet.
Yeah, it's all about possibilities and serendipity. So to show you guys that, we're going to need 2 volunteers from the audience. Come on, who wants to come on up?
Yes, somebody who had coffee.
Come on up.
All right.
And the second person in the back row, or whoever.
So this is about what happens, not what happens with you and your screen, but what happens
when 2 people actually interact.
Other people.
It's kind of like an after-school special.
Okay.
We're going to do a little role playing. So you guys.
All right. Getting people out of their seats this morning.
What's your name?
I'm Liz.
Liz. And what do you do, Liz?
I am an account executive at Mammoth Media.
She's an account executive at Mammoth Media. And you are?
I'm Kat, and I teach writing at Northeastern.
You teach writing at Northeastern. All right. So as an account executive, have you ever needed someone who knows a lot about writing?
All the time, actually.
So give me an example of what you would want to pick her brain about in terms of writing.
Effective copy.
And as a writer, would you ever want to talk to an account executive about anything? What would you want to talk to that person about?
Probably how to run the department, finances.
Nice. Anybody in the audience getting into what's happening here? Did you answer any of you, could you ever use a writer? Could you ever use an account executive just in terms of getting advice, airing your ideas? Show of hands? So that's a great example of why co-working is so much more than the sum of just people at desks.
I'm just going to jump in here. Face this way. Okay, this way. So, typical work world, right? Facing screens. Also, we have Google, right, as a way to answer questions. But co-working, here we go. They can actually have a conversation.
Awesome. Have a round of applause for these 2 guys.
So as you can see, it's definitely more than what this definition offers. It's about the surprise factor and the exciting things that can happen, these opportunities when 2 people, two seemingly disparate people come together and share an environment together. So what we're talking about today is this exciting world of co-working. And we want to talk to you about it because this is the future of work.
Yes.
So get ready.
Just a little background. I'm a photographer. My name is Alana. My business is called Ars Magna. You can follow me on Twitter there if you care to. I photograph mostly people. I do portraits for entrepreneurs. I also do boudoir, and I do shoot weddings. My background is also in museum education, and I worked at the Gardner before moving to California. And then when I moved back from San Francisco 3 years ago, I was looking for a space to work. I didn't want to work out of a second bedroom anymore. And I went on Craigslist and I found Ben.
So I'm Ben, and my business is ThinkSide. I do identity design and brand development. And the only way that I can categorize my clients is to say that they're all brave people who are trying to change the world. That's kind of what I end up getting excited about. So as Alana said, about 4 years ago, I helped create a co-working space in JP. I didn't really know what the word, I don't think co-working was a word I'd even heard. I just had some friends and we were sick of working alone in our apartments. So we rented out an old car garage and threw some desks in there and had some parties. And when we looked for people, we put it out on Craigslist and found Alana. And she was just moving from San Francisco. She was doing a portrait project of entrepreneurs across the country and got her move paid for by an entrepreneurship magazine. So I was like, oh wow, get her in here. Like, that's the person I want to hang out with every day. So that's where I come from.
So
And
eventually that space disbanded last summer, and in that time, over Twitter, we met John.
Yeah, Twitter. So I'm John Lopkin, and I'm also a graphic designer. I am John Lopkin, and I also am a graphic designer. I own a strategic graphic design boutique called Amuse Graphique. And although I'm an independent designer, co-working allows me to build dynamic teams by sharing space with other people. I can offer basically a mini agency of sorts, and I can work with other independent freelance designers, developers, whoever it might be.
And we've all worked together on multiple projects, both personal interest and paid. You know, it's just, it really runs the gamut.
So, great statistic. Right now, 30% of workers in America work on their own.
And
In 10 years, by 2022, that will rise to 50%.
so half of everyone in the world will be independent, which is pretty staggering when you think about it. It will be an equal amount of people on their own versus people working in larger companies. So these spaces are popping up everywhere. With this rise in this increase of population in the independent workforce, people are just forming these co-working spaces because they need to. They don't want to work out of their house. You know, they don't want to sign a full year lease. But what we've found and what we've experienced personally is that as these spaces form, they create these like mini marketplaces, and it's really fascinating. This extremely trustworthy network of people who you can refer work to, get advice from, be friends with, hang out with, work on projects. And we really think that this is going to change the way that the economy works. With the increase in independent workers, more co-working, and then we're going to start seeing this trend towards like people talk about the project economy, the gig economy, and One Big Open's kind of, we'll talk about it at the end, but we're kind of getting at what the heart of that value is.
So, out of the audience, who here works for yourself, is an independent?
Many.
Good. Who would like to eventually work for themselves? All right. Who came to Mike's talk and got all the directions on how to quit your job? This one. Is Mike here? So out of the people that work for themselves, does anybody work at home or has tried working at home? Yes. How about a coffee shop? And who here has already started co-working? Oh, less of a number than I thought.
Yeah.
All right, this is great.
So we're going to tell you how to co-work.
How to do it, how to start, how to build your village. All right. So initially you need to figure out what you need as a business, as a person. So when I did this cross-country move, I knew that it was important for me to have somewhere that I could shoot. It was important for me to have somewhere that was on brand and reflective of what I was trying to provide for my clients so that they would feel comfortable giving me money, important. And I also really wanted to join a community. So that was important. And then also for me, one of my values with my business and my clients is that it could be accessible by public transportation. So that was what I was looking for when I joined Ad Hoc.
For me, it was I was looking for resources. I started off working from home, and I remember there was one day where I spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to find the right project management or accounting software. And what does anybody do when you're by yourself at home and have a question? You go to Google, or you ask Siri, or you go to Facebook or whatever. And I spent too much out of my time going to blogs and forums and all these crazy things that I couldn't even necessarily trust. Whereas if I could turn to someone and just say, hey, you're a designer, what kind of project software, management software do you use? And then I could get someone's response, I could get someone else's response. It just narrows it down. So that's one part of the resources. I was also looking just at the fact that I could talk to a designer or a photographer and say, what do you think about this project that I'm working on? And I could get solid feedback. And even more so, I could talk to someone that might not necessarily be a designer or a photographer or a quote-unquote creative, but they might be more of the audience that I'm trying to talk to, and I could get their good feedback.
So for me, how I got into co-working, I was working in my bedroom, or spare bedroom, and there's no point to a designer working alone in a room. It's like art doesn't happen in a vacuum, they say, and it's totally true. I just wanted to be around people who were doing stuff that I wasn't doing. I wanted to be stimulated, I wanted to be inspired. I wanted to go somewhere every day and feel like I was part of the world. I'm designing for the world, I should be in it, you know? So co-working spaces have provided me with that, a sense of community and an awareness of the really crazy, broad, fast-paced scope that the world has today.
Those are some of the things that we were looking for, and I'm sure that you have either overlapping or additional needs.
Yeah.
So then the next step is to actually survey the spaces. So Space with a Soul, obviously we're here today. This is one example. Can we talk about this now?
Yeah. Space with the Soul is all nonprofit, and
Right.
you apply, so there's like an application process. What's that? Oh, it's not all nonprofit? Okay.
This is Stas.
Sorry, it's Stas who runs the space. Big shout out for Stas, yeah. It was not all nonprofit and now it's shifted. No, it wasn't. I'm wrong. Don't listen to anything I say. What I do know is it has an awesome space to speak in with an amazing view. So you apply and you go through an application process.
Mark Held is here from Candle, where all three of us at one point were also there. That's another space on Newbury that's members only. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm currently at Officio, also on Newbury, but up by the park, and that's kind of a come one, come all environment. Quiet, kind of got a library vibe going, which I dig on. It's open and airy and bright. You mentioned that you need a space on brand for you. It's very much on brand for me. Like, people come in, it's cute, easy to sell there.
so this is step one, figure out what you need and figure out what spaces offer it, because there's co-working spaces popping up everywhere, or you can just start your own.
Yeah, that's
Or
the
you
other
can
option.
join one big open, which we'll talk
Or you
about
can
later.
join one big open.
So right, so you surveyed, you went to Fringe, or Somerville, you went to Officio, Newbury, you did all the surveying, right? Now, after that, although it seems really obvious, you actually have to go there, and you have to work there. You have to treat it like a real job. As independents, our schedules aren't necessarily 9 to 5. But you don't have to be there 9 to 5, but you should make sure that you're there on a regular basis. You're there, and to the point where people know you and recognize you and say, hey, where's Ben today? And they'll know who you're talking about.
Also, you got to talk to folks. It's easy to go to these spaces and maybe just sit by yourself and do your work and then split, which some days you want to do because you just want to focus. But I found that when I go to a new space and I'm meeting new people, I have to talk about what I do. And in doing so, I sort of listen to my own story. And we do this a lot, the elevator pitch, whatever you want to call it, at networking events. Maybe once a week, maybe a few times a month. When you do it multiple times a day, you get really good at it.
And it's also interesting when people bring, so say like Ben will bring somebody into the space and introduce me, and hearing him introduce me and what language he's using, that's also, oh, that's what I'm putting out there, that's what other people think I do. Okay, is that right, or do I need to adjust that?
Right, there's a huge education component.
Right, it's sometimes awkward though, like to just tap somebody on the shoulder and be like, hi, I'm John, I'm a graphic designer.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want to do that, it could get kind of weird, but a way to break the ice is perhaps bring donuts to the place, or your favorite fat-free food, whatever that may be. In our place at Candle, I'm going to give a shout out to Mark Held, even though he told me not to. Every Tuesday, Mark is the nicest guy possible, he brings pastries from his favorite bakery. So first of all, he's sharing his favorite bakery with everybody. but also he's causing us to get out of our chairs, get away from our computer, and socialize.
So another part of chatting is to listen and be a sounding board for other people. That's something that is really important. This is all, I think, obvious stuff, but still needs to get stated. Listen to what other people have to say and ask them what you can do for them.
Yeah. And it's also about getting out of your profession. So, like I said before, as a designer, being a sounding board for a photographer is awesome because I get to think about challenges unique to that field.
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do is strategic drinking because it's a write-off, right? And it's fun. So it could be coffee, iced tea in the summertime, a beer after work, a late night glass of whiskey. People bond over food and drink. So make that extension. Learn about who people are outside of their work persona. Because then all of that unexpected serendipity happens.
Yeah, I think we get kind of bogged down in like emails, for example. I know that when I worked by myself, I would just sit there and hammer the keyboard until my fingers were bloody. And it's important to remember that there's people behind those emails. They have lives and children and homes. They live in neighborhoods. And when you go out and strategically drink with them, you get a sense that, this is a full person, they have dimension, and that improves the work, but it also just spiritually makes you feel better about what you do. You're not just shooting emails off to nameless, faceless people. They're real. It makes your day makes my day feel more robust.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because social media is great, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good things about it, like you were saying here. Ben and Alana met on Craigslist, we met on Twitter somehow. But there's got to be a point where you disconnect from social media and you actually have that person-to-person and face-to-face interaction. It creates a much stronger bond.
It's like social media unplugged is what we call it.
Yes,
You're
it's
in a mixed
deconstructing
environment.
that industry silo that you can nerd out in.
Yeah.
I know these guys will talk about fonts for hours.
It's hard not to.
That brings us to our next endeavor, which is about possibility, and it is this is our new beta project, One Big Open, and it is about a community of independent creatives who make a commitment to this being open, to saying yes, to being outward facing, to getting out of their silo and really making this city a really dynamic, exciting place to be where there's open possibilities.
Yes, it's an extension. It could be co-working by day, but it's also in events by night. It's an extension of a lot of the programming that we're currently working on, like portfolio critiques or inter-industry mixers or lots of different kinds of events that are happening.
We think about it kind of as like a creative accelerator. So you've heard of maybe some of you have heard of startup accelerators or tech accelerators. Only in lieu of angel funding, we're just adding positive energy. That's our funding source. So that people who want to engage with the world around them can go and get all this awesome feedback and create this like crucible for all these great ideas to kind of shoot out of. And we think that in that crucible is really the seed of where the economy is going, where capitalism is going, to a more project-based, loose, and extremely agile dynamic.
So right now we are looking for people that want to get on board, that get it, that are ready to be outward facing and want to join us in doing a pop-up residency in a gallery, museum, or storefront. And who want to be with it for the future of work.
Jazz out, yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking at a week for our beta engagement, talking to some museums, like Alana said, and galleries. And we just all we want from you is to show up and have fun and do the things you want to do and talk about the stuff you like. And
this is what it's all about, being an entrepreneur, working for yourself. It's work hard, play hard, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's not worth it, right? So,
Yeah, if anybody has questions about our joint projects, what we're working on,
Or anything in
or
general.
co-working, yes.
You better explain what exactly this is. Like you said, it's a pop-up residency.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
right now.
It'll be
Sit
a,
on that?
Right now, One Big Open is us and the programming that we're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't have a permanent space yet, but we are.
That's where I'm confused. You are co-working, you talked about different spaces you're working, you're looking to get a space?
But
That's right.
not
A
permanent.
space?
not permanent.
Not
One Big
permanent.
Open is like the meta layer on top of all the co-working that's already happening.
Okay.
Flashpoint for the crazy idea that when people co-work, there's this more than the sum of its parts, that like something amazing can happen. And we don't technically know what it is. We don't want to know what it is. We just want to see what happens.
So, like the Design Museum, where is the museum?
It's kind of right here.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
So it is like we're doing programming already, and we're doing activities, and we're doing projects already. So that's like kind of umbrellaed right now.
What are those projects?
What are they?
Yeah.
We just did the Brand Tack.
Yeah.
The three of us and sorry, Mark is there too.
Sorry, singling you out again.
And some other developers and designers, we volunteered a full day to totally brand an emerging nonprofit. So these people came in with their idea and their concept and their like
Mission.
Times New Roman blank
Yes,
page
their
on the
Helvetica
web.
webpage.
And they had all these great ideas. And so we did like 2 hours worth of positioning and branding with them, and then the design team took it away.
Drew the logo in like 45 minutes, presented it over lunch, and then by the end of the day, they had a website, business
We
cards.
handed it off to the developing team.
They
and-
walked out of there with a whole brand.
So one of the founders of this nonprofit called One Degree, you can look it up online, it's onedeg.org, letter one, that she said it was like we midwived them. And so we did that in a visual way, right, giving
Yeah.
them a visual stamp to go out and get funding.
And it was a good proof of concept for like, it was kind of a miniature focused co-working experience. Like all independent people came together and just had to run the gauntlet together.
What was great too is that the clients got to see the whole process transparently. And
Yeah.
that's one of the values that we share, is to really make the creative process visible, which I think will make it more valuable in the marketplace.
Do you have guidelines on what the relative space you need? I mean, is it just up to code? Building, or
Up
is
to
it like
code,
Wi-Fi,
big,
or you-
open.
Is there like a sort of
So we want a totally open floor plan that can be quickly changed for event space at night.
Yeah. So like work during the day and then somehow move the desks out, which we did in
Pretty
JP.
modular,
Yeah, we've done it
nothing super permanent.
So are you gonna
Obviously to code, obviously ADA compliant.
Yeah.
And internet, heat, bathrooms, ideally a kitchen,
But not necessarily.
a place for Burismo.
Ping pong table?
Are you also looking at sort of all this to like, it could not just be co-work space, like you want a restaurant you think needs help, and you like I'm out with members, there's a restaurant like that that's really good, and the next to the dollar store, I'm not talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you like just
So like a-
helping local businesses.
Yeah, so we're also
Or
interested in
possibly
like,
for locations for programming.
yeah.
Alright.
Or like a 1 week residency, we would look at a gallery or museum, something we can kind of, that will house us.
The idea behind the gallery museum storefront is that we really want to be visible.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to be seen by the larger community. One of the pullbacks for us in looking for space was that, yes, Place in Fort Point, Mass Challenge is available, stuff in South Washington is available, but it's like sequestered and tucked away, and that's where people expect us to be. And we want to be somewhere unexpected and radically visible. So.
Other questions? Yeah?
You talked a little bit about one of your values was accessibility with public transportation for your clients. What are other aspects of a location or a neighborhood that are important to co-working people?
That's a great question.
Like, you've got TIC in Cambridge,
Yeah.
you've got some stuff, like you were saying, Seaport's all over here. You have some Newbury. What are some?
Well, like I can speak personally, a lot of my clients are downtown. Newbury Street makes a lot of sense. I work with a lot of high-end event types and people in the art and museum world. So I wanted a space that felt museum-ish. So Officio has a rotating gallery on the walls. There's always different art. It's open, the walls are white, the furniture is sparse, the plants are healthy. It's like, it has a positive vibe going on. I need that. It's, you know, a studio for a designer is also a selling environment, and it's something you can't do out of your house. Bring someone in and give them a, space is so immediate and emotional, give them an emotional experience that's right for the partnership you're trying to build.
Yeah, I think it's inspirational. I mean, you want to be able to not just be inspired by what's in the walls inside the building, but also be able to spill outside of the working environment. And if you want to just get away from your computer for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, and walk the street and see awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this goes to a larger question of positioning and understanding what values your clients have, your target market has, and then also like where does that dovetail into yours? And then when you're communicating that through your branding and your language and all of that, then the space that you're choosing should be in concert.
But when you're talking to these customers about these co-working spaces that are looking for co-working spaces, do you find that they are looking for any neighborhood in Boston in particular? Or does it truly matter?
Are you a real estate developer?
I'm sorry?
Are you a real estate developer?
Are you a real estate developer?
I work for real estate.
Okay.
Yes.
And these are very different questions. Yeah, I'm totally obsessed with Downtown Crossing. I want to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where we would like. That's where we would like our main residency to be.
And that reason for me is that it's like sort of equidistant from everywhere, and
Yeah.
it is a literal crossroads, and it's unexpected, and it needs to be activated. I hope nobody.
And it has the
pinch me
highest
for
foot
that,
traffic
but-
in all of New England, so our visibility goal is like totally achieved there.
For square footage, I think, you know, the outer layer of the city is
Mhm.
better for like light industrial stuff or people who need bigger footprints.
Yeah, there's a space in Somerville called Fringe, and it's huge, and they do a lot of light industrial there. There's a guy building bikes, there's someone building green roofs, and there's also an architect that's suitable for them.
They're fabricating.
Yeah, they're
the-
doing
the
fabrication.
floor space.
And our first space in JP was very dirty. It was an old car garage, and it worked for a while, and then winter came and we needed something that had heat, and you know, we all moved on. But it was a cool space because it had a garage door, so it wasn't in a high foot traffic area, but we had a garage door in the front, and when a lot of people would walk by, it's right by Green Street T-Stop, and they'd be like, "What is going on in here? Are you
Also,
people
it
like
looked
working?"
really cool. So when I'd be like, oh, to clients, oh yeah, we're having a party on Friday, and we're having this DJ come in, and they were like, what?
Yeah.
It's awesome. And none of them ever showed up, even though I always invited them, which was their loss, because we threw great parties.
Yeah. Other questions?
So I do like soft co-working, just talking to people on the phone, and I always run into that gray area where it's, you don't know if you're bartering your services or if you should be, paying them for their time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how you guys handle that, like a bigger co-working environment.
That's a great call. Sometimes I do, for me, sometimes I do soft stuff where it's sort of quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Like with these guys, I think, because we are already at a deeper level of friendship. But I've also done it where it's monetized. So
That line.
I talk about it. You talk about it
Yeah,
right
you gotta
away.
be open.
Yeah.
Correct. It's a part of the whole thing. Like, I'm on a project right now. I hired Alana as the photographer. It's all monetized. You know, the client has a budget. Money goes
But that's
to
like,
Alana.
but that's sort of outside.
That's
That's, that's for
yeah.
clients.
Yeah,
But
it's
do you
for
mean
client.
like for doing stuff for yourself, like each other?
Sure, and
Yeah.
it can end up being like 15 or 20 people all giving you an hour or two of time.
So in JP, we talked
for
about.
everybody.
Yeah,
So
JP, we
there's-
talked
you
about
could
a
do
time
time-
bank.
yeah.
We never did it, but it would be a good idea for a co-working space where everyone just, they can put in time and then suck time back out. Or I've worked in trade with fellow coworkers a lot, hour for hour, or you can both monetize and then match your fees.
So that's helpful because then you can still say like, you still have 3 hours And like, even 6 months later, you have the documentation and be like, I need some video services.
Yeah, like I partied with the video people and we did this great project and now I have 3 hours left with them. So whenever I want, I can just call on them for 3 hours of video work, which is a nice thing to have in your back pocket. You know?
Also, like even having a discussion about monetizing it, and even if you decide not to do it, looking at what other people are charging, it suddenly makes them value you and you value their services a lot more, I think. 'Cause you understand
And now I know
what the breakdown is.
for when I work with my clients, if they come to me and say, oh, I have to hire a video person, I'm now a video expert. And I can tell them what to be looking for, how to price it out, what it should cost, you know, what are the values in that sector, and all of a sudden I'm an expert just because of where I work. You know, that's hugely valuable to independence.
You mentioned that co-working, having a space that you can sell to clients.
Yeah.
And how do you handle like insurance?
So
Great question.
some spaces, I assume if Stas is still here? I assume that he has one insurance policy for the whole space and then people rent out from them.
Mm-hmm.
What we ran into as a sort of a conundrum in our original space was that my insurance would only cover me if everybody else also had insurance. So you're talking about like
Business
inland marine
insurance,
or
liability.
business? Liability.
Yeah.
If the client comes in and twists his ankle on your property.
Yeah.
So everybody has to have it
That's
unless
the
it's
answer.
umbrellaed over, what?
That's the answer we got.
Yeah.
You know, who knows? I mean, we formed an association also, so there was somewhat of a legal entity, and then we all had to have, yeah.
I would say it's peace
liability.
of mind. You want to get business insurance because it's just peace of mind to know that if something happens, you have that insurance policy.
And I wasn't sure if it was like.
Yeah, sometimes they make it mandatory, so they are not held liable, but I would say best practice is to get your own.
Yeah, and I have to carry a different kind because I work off-site. So like, if I'm shooting, you know, somewhere else, I have to have, my insurance policy will cover me wherever I go. Any other questions?
Hey, can I quickly go back to that water?
Yeah.
I think you also have to look at it in terms of, it's essentially it's marketing for you. You know, if you are helping somebody say you have a graphic designer that you partner with, you don't charge them to help them, that's your own investment as a marketing, because that person may like your work and will tell others about you, so you have to put any work out of it. So you kind of have to find that fine line.
I'll do a little marketing. That's Nima from Officio.
Yeah. And to his point, I had worked with a web developer for about a year, just alongside. We had never worked directly together on a project. And then when he needed like $13,000 worth of print work, I got it. No contest, because he knew my work was good. He saw me work. He heard me talk to my clients and knew that I knew what I was doing. And I was the obvious choice. And then when the work came along, we were in the same space when it happened. So it was even easier and more efficient to execute it. And he developed the brand, I developed the print, and it all worked together better because,
Talking about produce?
yeah, because we worked together. And that was like, you know, that's nothing to shake a stick at in terms of revenue.
One other thing that I'll throw out there is that for your clients, out of a co-working space, then you become a resource broker for them, right? So if Ben's client needs a photographer, he has me, of course, right? But he also knows a videographer. He knows somebody that can do a web design, right? He can
Yeah,
point
we
them
worked
to John.
together on two
So
huge projects last year.
as a value to your clients, you have access to this network of trusted professionals. And that becomes a really key selling point, I think.
And the network is agile. It's always shifting. People are always coming into it. People are always rising to the top and cycling through. And I can't stress enough that today's world's only going to change more and more rapidly. And that kind of structure is going to be totally necessary to keep up and to find the best talent when you need it and give it to your clients. So you start to become a magician for them. They're like, oh my God, like how do you know all these people? You know, and they love it.
One question that I was surprised didn't come up because we were totally prepared for it.
What?
What do you do when you have two designers working in the same space? Take it away,
yeah.
guys.
So when we first started out, we were super. You probably felt the same way, but I was working with another designer in JP, and we were like, what if we both do branding? Like, are we gonna compete for clients? But I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't found that at all.
Yeah, I find that if you go about looking at everyone as competition, then you're not doing yourself or your clients any good, basically. I mean, if I can turn to Ben and have him look at a project that I'm working on, and he can give me advice, even though he's not necessarily working on the project with me, it's going to help the end result. And also, if I can work with Ben and we can create, again, like I was talking about at the beginning, like this mini agency of sorts, then we can go our separate ways also, but we can also band together and create this team.
It gives us options.
Yeah, it gives us options.
And he's a really smart designer, so I can turn to him and be like, is this font choice glib? And you know what I mean? And he can talk about like the terminals and the descenders and the X height, and we just get right to it really quickly, you know, which is great.
So does
Can't put a price on that.
Point of that, just don't be afraid of being around other people in your industry within a co-working space, because it also helps you differentiate what you bring in your business.
Yeah, it forces you to question, all right, well, if I'm one of many graphic designers, what makes me, you know what I mean, what makes me me? It causes you to reflect.
What about the size of co-workers? I mean, the number in the co-working space. Was there an optimum size you feel works, or a best group of skills?
I would say probably, I mean, it's hard to like pick a number necessarily, and it also depends on the space. If it's a huge space, then you can have, you know, up to 50, 60, you can have tons and tons of people. Like there's a place in New York that has,
WeWork?
yeah,
Yeah.
100, you know, like
They buy
100
whole
people.
buildings. It's like 8
but
floors.
it doesn't feel overwhelming. I think it depends on the size of the space.
And it really depends on the people. I went to one of these WeWork monolithic buildings in San Francisco, and I found a little tiny glass cubicle, and I sat down and started to work, and then the girl in the cubicle next door to me knocked on the door and was like, hey, I'm so-and-so, what's going on? Welcome to the space. So it's like, it's whatever you bring to it is what you're going to get out of it.
I think it depends on the culture that the space is trying to engage. And we talked a lot with Next Space, trying to get them to move to Boston. They're a co-working series of co-working spaces, mostly in California, Northern California. And she said that for them, the sweet spot was like 60, because typically out of that, like a quarter of people were really committed and engaged in making the community. So if you have like 15 people who were like ready to hang out every Friday for happy
Have
hour
beers.
and wanted to go do business book club and do all of these programming, then you had a critical mass.
How many people are at Officio?
Well, we have about 125, 130 members.
But it doesn't feel like that because,
No,
yeah.
you know, there was actually an international survey done that in Europe, preferred size is about 20. In the U.S., it's about 35 to 40 in a space at any given time.
At a given time. Yeah, that sounds
I
right.
mean, you could have 200 members, that doesn't mean they're all going to be there at the same time.
Yeah.
But, you know, one thing I did want to add about the whole co-working thing is you could have a space like ours that we try to host events and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's the person who's going to go and work there. If you're not an outgoing person, I was never, you know, kind of the nature of work that I didn't have to go out and network. But when you work for yourself, you really have to take this attitude that you have to self-promote. And when you're at a space, you kind of have to force yourself to go and talk to people. That's what really makes the community.
It's easier to talk when you have a drink in your hand too. So,
Or pastry.
yeah.
Hi, my name is John, I'm a writer, and I'm here to talk very much. Can you talk about access and cost? I'm a night owl, so I write like late at night.
Part of the surveying is if they're even open at night.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just have to find it, so each, because pricing and access is different.
Yeah, it's going to
Yeah, I
change for
think
space.
more the members only spaces, like the in Candle and like with Ad Hoc, we all had keys, so we could come and go
Key
24
and key
hours a
out
day.
At will.
I think Officio is open a set amount of hours.
We are, excuse me, but we consider 24/7. We did a survey, the majority of people didn't need it. So, I think it depends.
I feel like you could talk them into it though.
And then, you know, you can also start your own space. Like if you want to create a community, have people interested.
A night house
Start.
space.
I know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
I know that
And then you set the rules.
Work Bar has a nights and weekend option that my friend Johnny does. So it's like, I think it's a slightly less expensive than the daytime, and so he said he's just there nights and weekends. He uses it primarily to meet clients, and nobody's there. So that might be a good.
Let me give you a suggestion too about looking at spaces that are open 24/7. Ask about AC. Because I know for us, we're open, space was also, we're open 24/7 to our folks with keys. But our AC shuts off at 6. And so if you're here on the weekend and it's July, it's not an issue for most of us in New England, buildings don't ever shut off. But AC does shut off in the summer. So if you're in a building where the AC shuts off on Friday at 6 o'clock, and you want to come on Saturday at 4 to do some work, and you're in a brick building, these brick buildings hold so much heat that the minute the AC shuts off, it will heat up by 10 degrees, and 12 hours later, 24 hours later, it'll be really hot. So it's an important question to ask about what that structure looks like on the weekends, if you're thinking about working any off hours, because oftentimes things like lights and AC will play a part of it. And what happens if the internet goes out?
So, look, it sounds like you don't have time for any more questions, but.
So it's obvious we've totally inspired you. You want to hang out. You want to be a part of One Big Open. We have another brand hack coming up.
We have a brand hack that we talked about on June 1st at the CIC.
John and I have been doing works in process nights where you can come and share among a group of your peers projects that you're in the middle of and get some feedback while you're in process.
If you're a designer, I have an independent designers roundtable through the AIGA where we just commiserate about what it's like to work on your own as a designer and juggle.
Yeah, and I
share
do
best practices.
portfolio reviews and visual thinking strategy for business.
Yeah.
So,
follow us.
You can follow us here.
Yeah.
Follow them. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.